But so tell me what you're thinking. What about the egg? Oh, okay.
It's gonna come up early next year. You're gonna hear lots about that tonight. We're preparing ahead of time.
Okay. So you started out with some aspects you wanted to see them change with the project. Have they made those changes?
No.
The only aspect you didn't like was the parking, but
No, that's not true. They've gone around working with the city and working with UVU and everyone but us, and they're convincing everyone that they're doing what we want. They're not.
What are they still missing? What's the key element that's still not?
It's a problem with density, and it's a problem with the parking that the ingress needs to go onto the UVU property, onto Campus Drive. So
And those are the two key ones.
what's that?
Those are the two big ones.
For me, those are the two biggest ones. Yeah, really. It would be better if UVU owned them and it was a really student house. We really want to see student housing. Let UVU take it over, and that way we guarantee. The problem is it's not student housing. It's high density housing designed to accommodate students, but there's no guarantee. That's the big problem.
How you doing, man? Yeah, you gotta stay for the meeting though. How you gonna stay?
Like the whole time. I just have a mutual activity.
Cool.
Could I also get the signature?
I don't, if you can stay till 7, that would be great. Is that fair? See, what's the date today?
The 12.
12 or something. Put the wrong date on there, you're in trouble. What class are you taking this with?
Government with Stoddard.
Oh, really? Mark Stoddard? Which Stoddard?
Richard or something. Robert.
Is it which school? Okay, promise you'll stay till at least 7? Landon Jensen, where do you live, Landon?
I live north, obviously.
Which part of Orem?
Just around Mountain View area.
And is this part of Mountain View? So my parents live right next to Mountain View. Just I know it's for me. It's the mustache, right? It must be the end of the semester. You guys are finally getting around to doing. Okay, you're gonna stay for sure till 7? Yes. Okay. 1 hour commitment. It's probably gonna go longer than that. You'll get the fun part of it. Once we start talking budget, it's not quite as fun. All right. 7? Right, man. Nice jacket. You on the wrestling? Good. How are you doing this year? Is it good? Okay, fine. Hello, brother. How you doing, Mike? Mountain View? I do. So James Brown is doing the prayer.
No.
Oh, Michael. Okay. You guys have to stay till 7, right?
Yeah, of course.
You'll be so into it, you won't even want to be on the wall. You're going to be sad when it's over.
When we're talking budgets, you're going to be saying, dang.
Oh, budgets.
Yeah, they're excited to hear the audit report tonight. That's what.
I hope it gets heated. Thank you so much.
Going to be speaking in personal appearances. Wanted us to pass that around.
Group.
I want to make sure they got it.
Oh, that's right.
Part of the requirement.
You were hurt.
Part of the requirement.
Hey, my friend.
Oh, okay. Did a twofer. What did I miss?
Oh, yeah.
Where did I? Oh.
That's evidently a thing that's got people interested.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. We can fix it.
Solid waste.
Well, I shouldn't softly that. I just was kind of.
Nope, dump yard doesn't say that. All right, we're not ready.
Are there a lot of people that got some sort of
Mayor, tell them tomorrow.
They may be, I don't know. Covered.
You know, Jamie's not up here yet. We could just give it to Jamie. Go ahead.
We would like to welcome everyone out to our City Council meeting this evening and would like to call this meeting to order. We are going to begin with a prayer that will be given by James Brown and the Pledge of Allegiance by Troop 999. So if James Brown would like to come forward. Amen. If we could have the troop come forward.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Troop 999. We appreciate your efforts, and thank you, James Brown, as well. We would like to begin by approving the minutes of the City Council meeting of November the 14th, 2017. The minutes of the joint City Council meeting with the Alpine School District, November 15th, 2017, and the minutes of the special City Council meeting of November the 21st, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We would like to make mention of upcoming events. We have Return Community Services holding a Christmas party at 6 p.m. at the Orem Senior Friendship Center on December the 13th. On December the 18th, we're going to have our second annual community caroling at the cemetery at 6 p.m. with J.C. Roden and the City of Orem. On December the 21st, the City of Orem is holding their employee Christmas party from noon to 3 p.m. at UVU. On January the 2nd, we will have the oath of office given to the re-elected city council members and the mayor, and this will be at the Sierra Theater at noon. On the 24th, we have the Utah League of Cities and Towns 2018 Local Officials Day at the Legislature. And on February the 10th, we have Miss Orem 2017 and UVU sponsoring the Veterans Honor Ball from 7 to 9 p.m. at the UVU Grand Ballroom. We have some appointments to boards and commissions, which I would like to make mention at this time. First of all, we have a reappointment to the Library Advisory Commission of Courtney Burns. We have a appointment of Becky Buxton to the Transportation Advisory Commission. She has served the last 7 years on the Planning Commission. And we have George Vandewater, who will be serving on the Heritage Advisory Commission, currently with American Legion Post 72. Are any one of these three here? And if so, would they please stand? Okay. I would like to make a motion that we accept these people to these boards and commissions. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We now, every 6 months, we change the mayor pro tem to another member of the city council. Councilmember Sam Lentz has been serving well as the mayor pro tem for the last 6 months. And I make a motion that Tom McDonald be our new mayor pro tem. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We'd now like to go on to our city manager's appointments, and we'll turn the time over to Jamie.
Mayor, members of the City Council, I have a recommendation for 2 individuals to serve as appointees to 1, the Board of Adjustment, and 2, the Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals. This evening, I'd like to recommend, and this requires your advice and consent, the appointment of Leslie Nelson to serve as a member of our Board of Adjustment. Leslie is a long-term resident and business owner here in the city of Orem and has previously served as part of our Transportation Advisory Commission. And again, I would recommend that she be appointed to the Board of Adjustment. And we also have a Mr. Wilford Whipple, and it is recommended he be appointed to the Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals. Mr. Whipple is a master fire alarm technician, and he's registered with the state of Utah as the state of Utah Fire Marshal, and he specifically by profession maintains, inspects, and tests fire alarm systems and fire sprinkler systems. So that is my recommendation.
Are either one of those 2 here? If so, please stand. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and make those appointments of Leslie and Wilford. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'd now like to go on to personal appearances. We have some time set aside. We would ask that those that have signed up on the personal appearance sheet give us their name and hold their comments to 3 minutes. And we will go ahead and go down the list. So first of all, we'd like to hear from Angel Busath and then Mary Rowley. Sure.
Follow me with a map. Oh, it's counting already? Thank you. My name is Angel Busey, and I'm here to express concerns about the traffic increase on 800 South near the UVU campus. I have lived here for over 20 years. I have seen increased traffic each year, and this is expected with normal city growth. However, this year, it's been really different. The increase has been astronomical from last year. I live on a side street that opens onto 8 South. If you look at the red X, that's where I live, near UVU, and now I can hardly get out of my street onto 8 South. And I believe this is a direct result of UVU rearranging 800 South this year to now be their campus drive, and that's highlighted in the outlined red. I talked with Paul Goodrich, the city traffic engineer, and with Frank Young at UVU, trying to come up with some solutions to this new problem of increased traffic and through traffic backing up. I don't think the city realized what would happen when they allowed UVU to close their campus drive on the north side of campus, and now all the campus traffic dumps onto 8th South at 900 West. Students are now using 8th South and 4th West as their campus drive instead of campus drive because it's cut off. And if you've ever driven campus drive, there's about 6 or 8 crosswalks as you try to make your way through it. And the light that they just put in is backed up horrendously. So the students are avoiding that campus drive now and now using our city streets. Frank Young told me he's hiring a firm to relook at it, Horrocks, to relook at it and to reassess it and hopefully to redo it. I know Paul Goodrich is looking into ways to solve this problem. He's suggested by maybe putting in a roundabout, but I think the bigger issue of traffic on 800 South still needs to be reassessed. There's some safety concerns on 4th West now with Lake Ridge. My kids are raised now. They used to walk to Lake Ridge from my house. All my neighbors now have to drive their children because it's too dangerous to let them walk from where I live to Lake Ridge. My main concern is the proposed Peg Woodbury development of high-density residential housing right on 400 West. At the very least, I am asking for an unbiased traffic study to be done on 800 South and 400 West during regular college hours before any consideration of a zone change or approval for high-density housing. I know many of the recently elected council members and mayor ran on a platform of no rezoning residential zones for high-density housing. And this new traffic problem is just one more reason not to allow this development to go through. I love my neighborhood, and I would hope the City Council would be aware of and see the need to protect our residential areas from overgrowth and overreach of UVU. Please consider carefully any zoning changes that would cause our neighborhoods to be destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I hear from Mary Rowley.
Good evening. I am Mary Rowley. I live at 11th South and 300 West in Orem, and I would like to talk for a few minutes tonight also on the PEG development, but I think James left. I so appreciated that prayer. It just kind of touched me because when I come to these meetings, it's really nice to realize that we do have the right to come together and work together to figure things out, and I hope that we can do that. Growth is great. I think John Wooden is credited with saying that all growth is progress, but not all... No, all growth is progress, but not all growth is progress, if that makes sense. Anyway, you get my point, if not his. I am very concerned also about the PEG development. Every night when I come home from work, I just pray that all those ambulance and sirens that I hear going down to take care of the crashes along that road are not anything too serious. It is a real problem. People get impatient when they're backed up for 3 or 4 lights before they can turn into the college or go up the hill to get home and stuff. As far as the PEG development goes, we've lived in that neighborhood, not just me, but I represent a lot of the neighbors there. A long time. We have grown up with UVU. We were there before UVU, and we love it. It's been a great benefit to the community, as you all know, and I'm glad that they can continue growing. I am concerned that they want to overdo. There needs to be more colleges maybe, or at least different ways of doing it than have everybody right there. I know they want to have something close, but you know the Peterson development is now going on off of 15th South or whichever it is, so they're right through a parking lot to the school. Having it on that R8 development, it's just not there. All the growth that UVU has had has kind of used Campus Drive, as was mentioned, as the east boundary. It kind of kept the city separate from the school, which is kind of a good thing, I believe. We're part of it. We love the growth. We love the school. But it needs to be separate. And having 1,600 units or 1,600 students crammed in there, no matter which exit they leave, is more than that road can handle, as was mentioned. So I hope you will seriously consider that. I think it would be wonderful if the developers would simply turn that back into a faculty housing place. They need more faculty as well if they're going to keep growing like they are. I've already talked to the school about my concerns with their abundant growth. But I hope that you will consider seriously the desires of the community that live there and that have to deal with the traffic and with the that area, and let Orem stay a wonderful place, but not overgrow it so much with traffic and so many students that we can't enjoy a nice neighborhood as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Brad Weston. Afterwards, we'll hear from Murray Lowe.
I'm not used to coming to these meetings, so I printed that off just in case I don't talk fast enough. My name's Brad Weston. I live at 302 West, 1060 South in Orem. I'm also concerned with the PEG development. I'll read what I said because it's probably more organized. I have multiple concerns pertaining to the proposed UVU apartment developments adjacent to 400 West in Orem, which is PEG. I understand other members and neighbors will speak on other various subjects concerning that tonight. I decided to specifically address the quality of life as our neighbors talk about in this development. Our neighborhood consists entirely of long-time homeowners. It is stable with privately owned single-family homes. We built here due to the location and community. We property owners fear the disruption caused by a large additional infusion of students, and any other tenants who may not be students will create multiple problems. Traffic congestion. Already extremely busy, as you've heard earlier. There has been a dramatic increase in traffic over the past few years as the university has grown. Our neighborhood quality of life will be diminished via congestion, students and non-students, etc. To date, the single-family aspect of our neighbors provide a high quality of life. Over time, the university grows. There is a high probability that our neighborhood will be absorbed by developers or simply reinvented as rentals of existing homes and multiple students. The current president of UVU has bragged that he'd like it to grow to be 70,000 students, the largest in the country. There's no precedent in absorbing this type of growth to solve his ego, even though he's leaving to go on a mission in the next year as a president. Any expansion of UVU should be directed towards satellite locations to disperse impact. Virtually everyone in our neighborhood is upset at the prospect of an ever-growing behemoth next door. We will lose the very qualities that we love: low crime, relatively quiet and safe neighborhoods, occupied.
We'll have to have you stop. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, keep going.
One more minute, but only 2 sentences.
Sorry, go ahead.
We will lose the qualities that we love: low crime, a relatively quiet and safe neighborhood occupied by caring and energized families. I suspect our city council desires the same quality of life with our students. I hope you'll carefully address these problems with PEG. Thank you.
Thank you. Should have brought it.
I'm Murray Lowe. Merry Christmas, Mayor, council members, city leaders. Great to see you. I consider it an honor to run for election this year and congratulate those who won, and want to continue our dialogue here on civic matters. I'm here also to talk about the PEG development and talk about our firm opposition to it on 5 reasons outlined here. The first is that it encourages UVU growth. And a year ago, we opposed UVU's master plan and asked for your support. Since that time, we've met with the state and the county, and we've gained some traction. And support for UVU's unfettered growth on the Orem campus is less firm at the state and county level than it is actually here. Likewise, the concern in neighborhoods in Orem is widespread and not limited to individuals or a few neighborhoods. Please join us in helping UVU manage its growth more responsibly. We don't want Orem to become, we don't want to create a student ghetto like exists in Provo and many other cities in America. So please support your residents as we do this. The development abuts a junior high school, and we need these students to be safe. The Alpine School District was approached, and they said that this development had to empty into Campus Drive in order for it to be considered acceptable for the district. We know that the developers and others involved in the development have strong-armed the district into accepting a compromise, but we don't want you to accept that compromise. Go talk to the trustees and ask what they want. They want no traffic to be increased towards that school. Nothing is more important than the safety of our teenagers who go to that school. As we've talked about, the plan significantly increases traffic and congestion. We know Utah grows at a crazy rate, but UVU grows at a rate that's double the rate of the state of Utah. So while you have traffic problems that increase every year, in our neighborhood, they double the traffic increase that you have. That, combined with recent changes, makes the traffic tenable. So don't just consider Utah's growth and say we all have traffic problems. We have unique traffic problems being next to UVU. We think we need to create a city-driven neighborhood plan, one that's based on what do we want out of our neighborhood, as opposed to creating one-off zoning allowances. We asked the city to do this over a year and a half ago to say, let's move up the neighborhood plan, and again, ask you to do that. And finally, we know that this development is labeled as student housing, but there are no requirements that students have to live there. So just because PEG and UVU call it student housing doesn't mean it is that, in fact. And so we want you as council members to look through this and see what it really is and what it could really mean for the future of all the residents of Southwest Orem. Just want you to know that we are looking into options, what to do about this. We would rather work with you than have to worry about overturning a zoning thing. So please work with us and support us as we do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from Mark Tippett, afterwards Elizabeth Hofika. You don't have a handout for us?
No, but
I'm
I'll
sorry.
send you a text. First of all, I want to tell you how beautiful the lights look. Fantastic. Even kids think it's temporary. I congratulate the election winners. You have my respect and admiration. It's a hard job and it consumes many extra hours. Sitting on the city council is akin to being a judge. In the end, decisions must be made, and the success of our city is in your hands. Soon you will be faced with one. The PEG Woodbury will be seeking to change a residential zone to a PD zone in order to build high-density housing. I spent the last few months collecting data and studying the impact, which will soon be discussed here. My construction company built 2/3 of the homes in the Palos Verdes area. One of our main selling features was it was located next to UVU. For almost 40 years, this neighborhood thrived in its current location. One of the most compelling reasons not to approve this development is the need for Orem to preserve our limited residential areas. For almost 40 years, these families that were located in Palos Verdes put down deep roots. Some 30 couples put their families there. Their children attended Orem schools. They worked and shopped and lived here. They attended local churches. They made lifelong friends. Some even walked out their back doors and walked to work at UVU. High-density housing provides housing for temporary visitors. Their roots are shallow. They're good folks, but to them, Orem is just a whistle stop till they can find the American dream, a home. In perspective, in the large Ico Ashton high-density apartment area, only 6 children from that area go to an elementary school. Allowing high-density apartments in the middle of residential homes is not the best use. Our streets are designed for lower density already. Trading 30 homes for 1,200 students on residential streets just makes no sense. You are faced with a hard decision. UVU is important to Orem, but the theory that no neighborhood should have to touch UVU is just plain wrong. It worked just fine for 40 years. Also, my current neighborhood touches UVU, as do many more. Where will you draw the line? We will be asking you to do something reasonable and right. It will take courage. to cast a no vote to the Peg and Woodbury and UVU development. Please consider our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from Elizabeth. Okay, if she is not here, we'll hear from Jana Bauer, after which Gary Steele.
There's one of these for, there should be one for everybody. I don't need to be
You were short.
I'm Jana Bauer. I live at 612 North, 1025 West, and I'm going to change the subject. Thank you for this time. I'm going to keep it quick, and the reason I passed out handouts was so that I could do that. So I'm the representative for a group called Citizens for Safety. We got together at one of the planning committees that I'm on. Our concern is that we don't have enough police officers in Orem to keep our citizens safe as our town grows rapidly. So you'll see there a list of current statistics so you can compare with our town with other similar towns. Orem now has 98,000 citizens, and we have 93 police officers, sworn police officers. So the officers on each shift are a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 8, including the sergeant on duty, who does not always leave the office due to paperwork. So this is perfect. So if you give me a second, I want to do just a little, you know what you call them, object lesson. So you guys, there's 8 of you. So Mayor Brunst, you will be the sergeant on duty, and you have lots of paperwork. So the rest of our members, that is our entire police force on any given shift for all of Orem. So for this example, we're just going to take a day. There is not rarely a wreck down on 800 North and 1200 West, down by me. And if there's a pretty good wreck, there's going to be 3 police officers that are going to have to go there. So the 3 of you are busy at that wreck. So it's not that great of a day. South Orem, it's Christmas time, people need money. We're having a convenience store robbery. So the 2 of you are going to have to go there, maybe all 3 of you. So that pretty much leaves Sam Lance to watch over the herd, 98,000 of them. But one of the kids down at UVU Housing did not take care of their Christmas decorations, and there's a fire in student housing. Okay, maybe one of our guys who are at the 800 North wreck can break away, but we're maxed out. And maybe our neighbors and around surrounding towns aren't having as bad of a day as we are, but maybe they are. So I'm just saying, just an example of how thin we are spread. And we're not getting any less people, we're getting more people. So next, there are only 3 neighborhood preservation officers in Orem, and they're sworn officers. So they cost more money. I'm not just complaining. If you flip your paper over, there's some suggestions to perhaps work through that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll now hear from Gary Steele.
Mr. Mayor, my comments are on one of the items that is on the agenda.
Okay.
So I'm not sure my name should have been on that list.
That's fine. Thank you. So we have Carlos. Same. Okay, and the rest are the same. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll go ahead and move on to consent items. The first one being a recommendation for a motion for the City Council to accept the 2018 City Council meeting schedule. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Move on now to our scheduled items. Item number 15 is a public hearing discussing the SLU codes and the M1 and M2 zones. Jason Bench is our presenter, and we'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Let me pull up my presentation. So tonight we're discussing the elimination of two land use codes that are currently in the ordinance, SLU 4850, which is solid waste disposal, and 5193, which is scrap and waste materials. Currently they're permitted in the M1 and M2 zones, which you can see on the map. West of I-15 and east of Geneva Road are the M1 and M2. There's a smaller M1 zone and a larger M2 zone. The proposal tonight is to eliminate those as permitted uses. As many of you may know, we are in the process of doing an area-wide plan for Geneva Road. We've just hired a consultant to do a Geneva Road plan, and that's starting kickoff in January, and we'll run through all of 2018, hopefully be back to the council November, December of next year with that proposal. As part of that, there are uses that concern us as far as being right on Geneva Road. You know that UVU, or the Vineyard, is developing. Orem has a great potential based on our economic strategic plan that was done a few years ago. The triangle is referred to on the economic person that done that. This area is ripe for, or prime for redevelopment. And so as we move forward in this plan, we want to not allow any more of these uses on Geneva Road. And so that's why we're coming for you tonight. There are two existing businesses that will be affected by that. There is a solid waste transfer station and a scrap and metal recycling place as well. So they will be affected. They will be non-conforming as we move forward. So that is our proposal. I'll be glad to address any questions. The Planning Commission did make a positive recommendation, and staff does support that.
So as we sit right now, 2 years ago we did have two metal scrap recycling facilities. One I know was bought out as a company as a whole, and then left their particular location on 8th North by the freeway. So now we have one on Geneva Road. As far as a landfill area goes, or a transfer station, our transfer station for the North Point is not very far away. If you go down basically 2000 North, you can head over and get that facility. So I feel like that this is beneficial. I feel like that we're covered for what we have, and feel like that this is a good change within our city. Are there any other council members who would like to make motion or make a discussion? Councilmember Seastrand.
Thank you. Could you clarify a little more? What's the difference between solid waste disposal and incineration and scrap and waste materials?
So scrap and waste is going to be your cans that you want to recycle, or other old hot water heaters, things like that you take, and then they scrap out the metal and sell it. That's what the scrap and waste would be.
Primarily metal related, or does it include other?
I'm not sure what they do, but copper wiring and those type of things that they
primarily metal though.
But they recycle. Yeah. Okay. Solid waste is going to be, could be residential waste. In this case, this particular location was approved for construction waste, so lumber, sheetrock, those type of things that they separate out and then recycle what they can and throw away what they don't. And so there are differences between them.
Solid waste disposal, that is what?
Solid waste is going to be residential trash, your dumpsters out in parking lots, those type of things are all collected in one location and then hauled to the landfill.
So 5193 is dealing more with the recycling of scrap metal or scrap construction material.
Could be, and it also could be recycling of cardboard, things like that. It could also be scrap.
And then 4850 is dealing with household trash or solid waste aspects that are not metal or some of these other things.
Yeah, typically not necessarily recyclable. They just collect it, haul it to the landfill.
If I may, Jason, just for the point of clarification, under 4850 currently, we do have one facility in the city that does provide service under this SLU code. However, its focus is construction and demolition materials.
Correct.
It's not residential solid waste.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz.
Jason, could you speak just a little bit to the master planning that Vineyard is doing on their side of Geneva? I mean, for a time, this wedge over there was almost the edge of the earth as far as Orem was concerned, because there wasn't really any development west there, whereas now we have, you know, kind of vibrant residential and commercial areas that are forming over there. Can you speak to maybe what kind of timeline you would expect some of those areas to be developing, or do you think that'll be in the next year or two? Is that more of like a 5 to 10 year?
Well, a few years ago, they came out with a plan that they're going to grow 30,000 people, and we thought there's no way they're going to do that. Well, they're now, over 10,000 citizens. So it's growing very fast. We talked to the school down there that they get 5 to 10 new students weekly. So they're growing very, very fast. This area directly across the area that we're looking at, 500 north, where these two businesses are located, you got the movie theaters. Right now they're master planning that area and getting some new developments there. The housing is further west on that, but the overall area is developing faster than I anticipated, and I think faster than they probably anticipated as well, because now the ball is rolling and people are coming and developing there. And we are trying to capitalize on that as well by doing this master plan and seeing how we can capitalize and redevelop this area.
Yep, a mutually beneficial relationship there.
Yes.
So as far as those two specific uses, those were the only two areas in the city where they, the M1 and M2 zone, those are the only areas where those two uses were permitted. Oh, I should say currently are permitted. Where would somebody have to go if they wanted to, scrap metal if we were to remove those permitted uses?
I know there's one on South State in Provo. I don't know what other locations. Well, yeah.
So you have scrap metal
as far as aluminum cans, things like
Southeast Provo. That's a very
Southeast
large
Provo.
one.
Yeah.
And then you have the North Point for solid waste, household waste, all kinds of things, and that's over in Linden,
right?
Just across the border.
I
so we're
took that as
covered pretty well.
Yeah, I took that as being recyclable stuff. Sure. That'd be the closest one to be Provo.
Both of those are very big. So North Point will handle 35 cars in line on Saturday morning. The metal waste facility over in South Provo is a very large one as well. Covers the whole county. So one question I have is we have incineration on here. Tell me about that. This is going to include incineration of any kind?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of any incineration that we have in the city.
Okay. So we used to have that in the past, but
right. I mean, schools used to incinerate their trash and things, so we've evolved, and we don't currently, that I'm aware of, have incineration.
And maybe this is not a pleasant comment, but we do have a crematorium in Linden, just across the border. Is that allowed?
We have a different land use category, and I think it is allowed in the M2 currently.
Okay. All right.
That would be a different use.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open it up for anyone who would like to come forward and make a public comment. Please give us your name and hold your comments to 3 minutes.
Mayor, members of the council, Bruce Baird, 2150 South, 1300 East, Salt Lake City. I'm counsel for Dunn Construction. About 4 years ago, we were here talking about a very similar issue. This property has, over the course of years, developed as it has as a beneficial use, as the staff notes. What's changed is what's changed around it, but this use is still a necessary use. It still provides high-paying jobs. It still provides a necessary service. The fallacy here is that getting rid of this, making this change to the land use table will not make the use go away. All it will do instead is what I call ghettoize the use by turning it into a non-conforming use. That essentially precludes anybody from improving their facility and removing the negative externalities. So what you're stuck with is the negative externalities precisely because you've made it a non-conforming use. For example, Mr. Dunn is in with a permit to try to enclose his facility. Now, we may have a dispute as to whether he's vested or not, and I'm not going to go into that here, but he would like to enclose his facility to avoid all of the negative externalities. But this ordinance would effectively preclude him from doing so because you wouldn't be able to finance it because it's a non-conforming use. If you study the history of non-conforming uses when you create them, a large part of the blight of urban Salt Lake and other cities is caused by the wholesale creation of non-conforming uses, which prohibits this upgrade. My suggestion would be, instead of this blunt meat axe approach of making them illegal, the better way to do it would be to regulate a couple of things. One, I heard the planner say they wanted to stop them from spreading. Well, that's easy. You simply don't allow this. You simply limit the zone to where they're allowed, so that you can't have a spread. So that what you have is what you have, and then you impose standards, which you can do on the negative externalities, such as, and many of them already exist. I mean, I think the planner would be candid enough to acknowledge that the city and the county and other agencies already have standards regarding noise. So saying you're changing this to avoid the noise issue is false, because you've already got noise protection. You've already got dust protection. You've already got all of those other protections. If you need to create more protections, then create more protections. But by making this non-conforming, all you do is damage the ongoing businesses, and they stay there, and they continue to get worse and worse. They continue to be exactly on the trajectory that you don't want them to be. You're not solving the problem by doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, council members and mayor. Thank you for your time and for your service. My name is Dave Calais, a resident of Bluffdale, here today representing Geneva Rock and Clyde Companies. Just wanted to comment on this. We're really concerned about, although this is a minor change to the ordinance, it could have major consequences for our operation in that neighborhood. And for that reason, we would encourage you to postpone this or to not pass this today. We operate a batch plant, concrete batch plant, and hot mix plants there in that area. And we are one of the larger property owners in that neighborhood. Wherever you do concrete and asphalt, you have to process recycled materials and solid waste and recycled asphalt. Those materials have to be done in an area where that's permitted. If this were to change, we also become potentially a non-conforming use. And that impacts us because as a business, yes, we hope to grow. And we hope to come back someday when, with more development in Orem that we're supporting and providing concrete and asphalt for. The projects we do here for Orem City, road repavements, foundations for both the city or private businesses, we use recycled products and we recycle that solid waste in there. And by solid waste, we're talking about when you tear up the road, when you remove concrete, that is a waste product. We take it to our facility, we crush it, we use it similar to an aggregate, and it's treated and considered much like a waste product. Between the Point of the Mountain and Spanish Fork, this is one of the very few remaining areas where we can do this. So to have this become a non-conforming use becomes a big problem for us, and any change in our operation, we wouldn't have anywhere to go to service this area of the county. The purpose of zoning, of course, is to bring things into conformity over time. And so, therefore, by becoming non-conforming, it feels to us like, well, we're being asked to leave, essentially, because we are non-conforming. What we're doing is not wanted in that area. Now, it's important to note, we're sandwiched between railroad tracks, a manufacturing facility, and the freeway. It's a very appropriate area to do what we're doing to produce asphalt and concrete and to use those waste materials in that process. We provide a lot of good jobs there. If we leave, it's hard to see that go. Anyway, thank you for your time and for your service.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Dunn, owner of Dunn Construction, DBA DCD Transfer and Recycling. I am one of the businesses that will be affected if this goes through. I've been there for 17 years. The business has changed a lot in the 17 years. Number one, Geneva was across the road, I understand. And that's where they wanted me, and that's where I went. Now Vineyard's come in, and yes, it has changed, I understand that. I'm willing to change and build what I can do to clean up my operation that was once matching Geneva that now I am the eyesore. I put in plans to this city. I've talked to Jason a couple of times earlier this year, turned in a set of plans. Wasn't quite what he wanted, but I'm willing to put the building up and contain everything. The recycle business changes constantly since I've been in it. I used to do plastic. I used to do cardboard. I did papers. It's always been on the move. A lot of them things went away when 08 hit. It's now coming back. Metals are doing a lot better. I can take this sorting facility that I'd like to build and pull that out of our landfill so we don't have another pile of trash even higher and higher and higher in the mountains that we're building. We can use that metal back in metal again so we don't have to dig up iron ore pits and have another Geneva Steel pop up somewhere. These are the things I'm working on inside the recycling. The trash, everybody throws it away. You have a curbside program. I'll be honest with you, if you checked it, you'll find just as much trash in the curbside as you do in your regular garbage can. It's not as bad, but it's still there. My facility and the one I want to build, we take a lot of that out so it's just not thrown away in that. I want to clean up my operation and do more. If this comes through, I'm stuck. I've got another 20 years to work in my lifetime. I don't want to be a sore for Orem City. I don't want to create a sore and keep it there. I want to be able to expand, modernize, and do what I need to do in my zone that I set up 17 years ago. These are the things I'm looking to the council to let me go back to the planning commission and work through them issues and make it a usable piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gary Steele with MCR Recycling. Our company falls under the 5193, the scrap and waste materials. Just reading your minutes here, when you're talking about offensive sites, smells, noise, pollution, dust, foul, and rodents. I don't know if anyone from the council has been to our business. That defines none of ours.
I've been to your business
None of
many
that
times.
is our problem. As far as I know, we've had no complaints. So we're a little curious as to why we're enveloped in the process of changing the land use codes when it hasn't been a problem in the past. And we also, we don't know how we can pursue with being legal non-conforming. We're not, I mean, we haven't had a chance to really research that, so we would hope we could have more time to look into that, or that we get removed altogether from this, you know, separate the two land use codes, since we have never had the problems that you say we've had here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Carlos Magdaleno. I'm the manager over at MCR Recycling. First of all, it just kind of boggles my mind a little bit that we are, as a city, trying to push recycling out of our city. And, you know, as Vineyard grows and that side of Orem grows, we need recycling present. all of those houses over there, it's so dense. Those people need an outlet for their recycling. And a lot of times in those types of developments, they don't have an option other than to put their cans in their car and go sell it themselves, go recycle it themselves. To think these people are going to drive clear over to Provo to recycle their metal is not going to happen. That material is going to go into the waste. Recycling is an invaluable service. What we do for this community is invaluable. You might say we're unsightly, but the thing is, all that material is being recycled, and this is material that's not in people's driveways and things like that. If you push this out of the town, you know, a water heater doesn't fit in a trash can. It's going to stay in people's driveways. It's going to sit on the sides of people's houses. It's going to sit on the sides of businesses. We need to have recycling here, and we are here and we're taking care of it. We need to be able to grow as the community grows so that we can do our job properly over there. Please consider that when you're voting, and make a vote for recycling, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Matt Harris, and I actually live in Riverton. I work for UPS, who's right in the middle of all of this. The air quality, the problems that we have at UPS on my facility is a result of the city not allowing some of these places to get better, right? To grow, to expand, to really make it to where they're going to make it their own business that much better, to make it more profitable, to make the city look better. And as a result, we have issues with air quality. We have issues with stuff all over my package cars, over my employees' vehicles, in the air. And by allowing this to not, or by not making this non-conforming and allowing them to build their building, the recycling plant right behind me, would eliminate all this. At the same time, it would make the city look better. I've been around this city. I've been around every city in Utah County. And there's no reason that I can see why you wouldn't want to make your city better and to still offer these type of services to your residents. So please take that into effect, or take that into your thoughts, and understand that you guys aren't the only ones that are affected, right? This is Orem City. You have so many other people in other cities that could come here and profit from a business like that, and allowing them to stay and be able to grow will actually help the process along. So I appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members. I am Mita Johnson, representing the Utah Pick Apart, which is in the Zone M2. We provide the service for the city to be able to crush cars, to be able to allow people to pick what parts they want, and then we dispose of and recycle, take the wires and the metals out. We dispose of approximately, in 1 month, 200 tons per month of metal from the cars, approximately 1,200 gallons of assorted fluids, which would be transmission fluids, oil, gasolines, and those type of fluids that are in these cars that are processed as recycled materials and are disposed of properly and safely for our community. And this proposal will have an effect on the business. I ask you, gentlemen, there is only one other place for people to go for to recycle their vehicles, and we provide the other service. This approximately our service takes care of approximately 14,400 gallons per year of waste materials that people do not want to discuss, but we make sure that they are disposed of properly, and we provide a service for the city and for Utah County. We also dispose of approximately 24,000 tons of metals are removed from the city. The streets, people abandon cars, people, they are eyesores. We are the ones who are able to get the city to give us the permits to be able to dismantle those cars safely, and of those, take them off of the city streets and be able to dispose of them properly. We ask that the city, that we be given more time to be able to present our case against this proposal. And we appreciate your time in listening to our request this day. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jesse Stauffer with Stauffer's Towing. We're the largest towing company here in Utah. We also operate in Wyoming. I'd like to say that I know that industry very well. And what happens a lot of the time is that towing companies, they kind of get drug into that, that we do the recycling and all that. And it's very hard for us to find a place to have a tow yard. And if we get rid of those things, I feel like, we're going to get grouped into that as well. We're on the Orem City rotation, and they require that we get to auto accidents in 15 minutes. And if we just keep pushing towing companies farther and farther and farther away, we're not going to be able to comply with that 15 minutes.
Where are you located at?
We're at 400 North and 1500 West is where we're at. And when we came down here about 5 years ago, my grandpa started the business 65 years ago in Ogden, and we've slowly just been growing, and I moved down here to get it going for my dad. And our plan the whole time was, right now there's a house on the property, was to knock the house down and build a nice, pretty shop there, asphalt the whole yard, and we would bring our truck out, because we tow semis, we tow mixers, we tow dump trucks. We would bring those accidents that have been involved in an accident to our yard, also cars. And you really have to, dig into these things. Is this going to affect towing companies that are on our Orem City rotation? If we keep pushing them farther and farther away from State Street, well, your officers are requiring us to be there in 15 minutes. You're the only city from the Idaho border all the way down to Santaquin that require tow trucks to respond in 15 minutes. Everywhere else is 20 minutes. So even in the snow, through all the lights, we don't have sirens on our trucks. All we have is amber lights. We don't have red and blues. And sometimes, yes, towing companies have to break the speed limit to make it in 15 minutes. Or, we get in trouble with the officers. So you have to really think about, these towing companies, they have to be able to respond to up to State Street, all the way down to 2000 South, past University Parkway in 15 minutes. So you have to really make sure that we're, able to not only be grandfathered in, but we're able to improve our properties, because we were going to build a nice shop so we could back our big wreckers in there. We were going to pave it, and I'm going to be here for a long time. All my eggs are in one basket, and if we're only grandfathered in and I can't improve that place, it's not going to look good for my lifetime. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments to be made? Okay, seeing no one else is coming forward, we'll close the public comment portion and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Seastrand, do you have a comment?
I had a couple of clarifications, and thank you everyone for your comments, and just trying to make sure I understand a couple of things. So with Mr. Calais from the Clyde Companies in Geneva, can you clarify that? I know there's a whole bunch of different codes and classifications in dealing with what he was talking with the road base and the concrete. I don't believe that falls in the household or in the solid waste category. Which category would that be in?
So they have their own batch plant, I think is what it's called, and whatever is accessory to that batch plant would be a permitted use currently in the M2.
Would either of these two codes in question have an impact, or would be part of where they're classified?
Not to my knowledge, no, they wouldn't be.
Okay. I'd love to hear more from Mr. Calais, if that's maybe his understanding too, that I think the issues that you're dealing with are probably not. I'm trying to see the connection on how the solid waste compared to what you're doing would be an issue or a concern.
So we recycle multiple products, and actually this is not well known, but we're one of the largest recyclers in the state of Utah by volume and weight. So it depends on the product we're taking, but and how it's classified. Sometimes concrete is not considered a solid waste, but a waste material. It's just defined differently. It's defined differently in Utah code. It's defined differently by cities. oftentimes, if concrete is not considered a solid waste, asphalt may be, because of the oil and other material that's within the asphalt. And so that comes with, usually has a similar solid waste type of restrictions or considerations with it. The EPA and other federal agencies also classify them differently. So that's part of the problem. Is for us, we're dealing with multiple different materials, and even the type of asphalt you're dealing with can have a different classification. So what we do with that is when we go tear up a road, we haul that all to the yard there on 4th North and crush it. And then cities like Orem, for example, require, and UDOT especially, require that RAP, recycled asphalt, to be put back into the mix at a certain percent. So for UDOT, a UDOT job typically will have like a 10% mix. And so we have to have that on site at the hot plant. Putting it into a non-conforming use, the next time we come to the city because we need to put up a wall or build a structure or cover the hot plant with a shroud or something, we are a non-conforming use. So we've been told. Oh, so go ahead.
My thinking is that I think the uses you're describing, though, are classified under a different land use code than the ones we're addressing tonight. And unless your company is classified under one of these two, I don't know that these proposed changes would really have that effect on your company. I just wanted to make sure I understood that, and that's where I was asking Jason a little clarification if their operations would fit under this land use code.
It would not. They're not currently have a business license or classified under these two, either one of these two.
Mark, can I just interject for a second?
Yeah, please.
So are there complementary services that you access at these other businesses that your processes require access to these types of uses?
Well, certainly we interact with those groups a lot. We, when we're part of our business, for example, is demolition. So we're demolishing, we're recycling those products as well. When we're in when we pull out utilities or when we're doing earth work, site prep, we're often doing demolition. And so that's one of the good reasons to be where we're at, is we're located near those services, and there's a reason why those types of services typically cluster together. It's not just the zoning, but it's, we do send products to them. We drop off materials there often. Oftentimes we're hired by them to bring it to their facility as well. And then the other concern is just, it's sort of little by little, right? So it becomes a non-conforming use, and how it's categorized may be different, but then that definition can change. And it's just, we feel like it's a little bit, little by little. So our concern is at some point we just get squeezed out. And that's the concern here. I think the recycled material, we're in that recycled business. It's very appropriate for the area. We didn't know about this change. I found out about it today at about 3 o'clock, so I hadn't had enough time to really research it, which is why we said hopefully we could postpone this or not pass this today. But the other thing is, as you have this committee regarding Geneva Road, and what's going to happen there in the future, as one of the large landowners there, we'd love to be part of that discussion at some point. We not only do we have a lot of property there, we have about 2,500 employees in that area as well. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilmember McDonald?
Sorry, Mayor, a couple more.
Have another question?
I had the same kind of questions with the car and the car recycling and with the towing. To me, I don't think those are also in the same classification.
And neither one of those two would be affected with this change.
So neither one of those companies would really be applicable here.
No.
From this standpoint. So the Mr. Stofford, you're good to build your building. I think that would be fantastic, and go forward
with site plan approval, of course.
Yeah, with the. So I don't think it's no way that. Thank you,
Councilor McDonald.
Jason, thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. That first of all, one of the best comments I heard, Mr. Dunn, I think we went to high school together, and the fact that you're going to work another 20 years maybe means I can too, so thank you for that comment. We're in it together, young man. Thank you. You're looking great. Thank you very much. The election season's over. I can tell you how I truly feel after, but right now we'll just say you look great, okay? Good to see you. The other thing that I think this little interaction has caused us is to realize that while some of these businesses maybe seem a little bit unorthodox, or certainly not what we'd want next to a mall or on a main street, they do provide a kind of a green living space for our world and provide some recycling. So hearing those comments, I was wondering, Jason, if there's a way we could craft where those particular businesses that are currently in business are zoned that they can do this, and therefore not make them legal non-conforming, but restrict other growth to that area so we don't become the recycling center for the whole county. Is that possible?
You're talking like a PD zone for those two properties?
For the 2 or 3 or 4 businesses that might be affected that are concerned. I think Mr. Dunn's business and Geneva Rock's concerned. It sounds like neither the car recycling or the towing group fit into it. But for whatever fits into that, rather than make them legal non-conforming, which can cause them trouble to future growth and benefit of our city and community, can we give them their own PD zone where they can do it? And Mr. Dunn and your council could maybe refer to this, and Mr. Calais, maybe you could say, if those could work, could we have what we want to have, and that is limit future of these facilities there, but not limit the people who are currently running businesses this way?
It's possible. I mean, it requires 3 acres, and I think between the 2 properties, we could probably do the 3 acres.
Mr. Dunn, how much acreage do you have? Mr. Calais, are you still here? How much acreage do you have? I know it's well over 3. I'm not exactly sure. I think we're around 20. Okay, substantially over 3. That's all I was trying to, and I wasn't sure of Mr. Dunn. So, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. NCR, are they affected as well, or are they not affected? NCR recycling, are they the? How many, sir?
It's well over the 3.
Well over 3. So I just wondered if this is a possibility where we can preserve what we want to for the city, but also preserve these businesses. So I don't know if that takes a lot of checking into. If so, then we have to defer this. But Mr. Mayor, that's my thought as we move forward.
Thank you, Jason. Councilmember Spencer. Okay, we've talked about this before, where we're trying to figure out a way to limit bringing additional businesses like this in. We don't want to necessarily have 5 recycling companies and 5 scrap yards, et cetera.
Right.
The existing companies are all very substantial, tax-paying, solid companies in the city of Orem, well-respected and providing a very necessary service. We certainly need recycling services in our city. We subscribe to that with all the recycling trash cans that we have. We have cleanup days. Certainly we need these services to help us in this community. But as we're trying to grow this area, we're trying not to grow it into necessarily an industrial base, but to grow it into an area that is moving into a little different direction. I have been concerned, as I've mentioned to you before, about legal non-conforming. We've talked about whether or not you can get financing for that. Per Councilmember McDonald's thought there and what you have just suggested, if there are ways to carve out zones, so to speak, for these existing businesses so they can continue to operate, not necessarily grow in land size, but improve their particular facility, and that it can be beneficial to them, and that we're not then necessarily encouraging or allowing new industrial businesses like that to come in. I think that would be beneficial. So for me, I would like to explore that before we move forward. Councilmember Spencer has decided he wants to speak now.
So I just had a quick question, Jason, on Mr. Dunn's plans to build a building. So did we give him a permit?
No.
So he brought plans and we stalled him, or what did we do?
No. Since about 2013, he's been trying to do some things. We've made corrections, and he just hasn't. I mean, he hasn't moved forward basically until now we're at this point. So he's had several 4 or 5 years of, yeah, I'm going to do something, and it seems to be more moving forward now, but that's where we are at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
But just to clarify, if I may.
Sure.
So this is pending legislation before the council. Because it's pending based on the ordinances that we have, as long as the council doesn't deny it and they want to continue it, then we wouldn't allow any new uses of these two until such time as we come back and make a PD or whatever. So as long as we do that and give us time to look at it, that's fine. We would not allow then any new businesses to come in.
And that would be my motion and suggestion, but we want to keep going with some additional comments here. So we'll go to Councilmember Lentz.
Mr. Harris, would you mind coming forward again? And I apologize. As I was listening to you speak, I felt like I was getting kind of mixed messages where at some points you seemed to be frustrated by some of the negative aspects of these types of uses. And then it seemed like toward the end you were talking about how you should let them fix those things and grow their business. And I wanted to make sure I understood what your specific concern was.
Well, my specific concern is the overall quality of it, right? So if the building plans that he's submitted, if they're unable to contain what he's working on, then I see no reason why he shouldn't be able to continue doing it, right? Because what's happening is because he's working on the outside, the stuff that he's working on gets in the air, because anytime you work with dirt, anytime you work with construction materials, it gets in the air, right? Well, I got employees who are suffering from coughing and stuff like that, and who knows what it's from, right? It could be from the air quality we already have in Utah. I mean, you know how bad it was today. But if we have an opportunity with a business who's willing to go forward and try and make that better from what he's doing and what they're providing, plus they're still providing a service to the residents of Orem or anybody who decides to come in, I don't see why we wouldn't accept it, is what I'm saying. There's problems, but some stuff he's trying to go forward with is going to negate those problems and get rid of them. And that's why.
Okay, thank you. I understand better. So you believe if we were to not make those businesses legal non-conforming, they would have the flexibility they need to correct and remediate those issues that you've had at your facility.
I do believe that, from what I've read.
And maybe just to clarify, UPS borders Mr. Dunn's property and his business back to back.
We do on the east.
And that's correct. And your facility actually has expanded and doubled in the last 3 to 4 years as we see UPS trucks everywhere. And to load and unload those trucks, you have to have open areas where the trucks can back in and load and so forth. So I can see where you can kind of run into problems with each other. And that's important that your business succeed and move forward, and that Mr. Dunn's business succeed and move forward.
Exactly. As long as we can all work together, we can make good things happen. So.
Sure. Thank you.
Before you move on, so I just wanted to express one of my concerns is there are businesses that talk about how they would like to improve, they would like to grow, they'd like to develop their business. But some of the businesses we're talking about with these specific uses, we've had multiple code violations and issues with compliance. And so I guess my concern is, do we believe that we'll get different results if we continue on the same path that we are? So I'm not sure if staff has any comment or.
Well, like I say, we've been working with them since 2013, and we're still in the same predicament. So if they're, commit to do what they're saying they're going to do, then that would obviously improve it. If they're not, and we just go down the road a couple more years, then we're going to be in the same predicament that we are in now.
Because I love the idea of these businesses being able to remediate some of these issues that we're talking about, but as we start talking about growing their business and expanding, that starts to concern me as we look at what our vision as a city is for that corridor, as well as looking at what Vineyard's vision is for their half of, or their side of Geneva Road.
Councilmember Seastrand.
Thank you. I just wanted to express, I guess, a thought from a high-level standpoint that I see it. I see these two codes as the 4850 and the 5193 as two different types of codes that I feel differently about each one of those. I really am okay with the recycling aspects, both the metal, the concrete, the construction-related materials. I think that is an appropriate use. I think it is it fits well now with the current zone and with the current environment. I'm not sure if long term it's going to fit there, but I think at some point the businesses along Geneva Road will find their value is greater served or has a higher value with future uses than what it does now. But I think that's the benefit of a changing and a transitioning area of the city as those things take place. With the materials, though, associated with the 4850, which my perception or observation is that these create a higher level of side effects in terms of smells, in terms of appearance, in terms of the trashy look, in terms of the rodents, the birds, and a number of different scenarios. That, for me, I don't think Orem should be a central focus point where that is a collecting point, where that is a place where we are saying, let's carve out part of our city to say that's what we want there. I don't think we want it there. I don't think that fits currently or even in the future as part of this zone. And that's the thing I'm trying to sort through, is to say I could be good with the 5193 and with the recycling aspect going on with that. I am really concerned with the solid waste aspect that comes with the 4850. That I don't think it's a good fit, and I think it detracts and is a problem for the rest of the zone, especially in the future growth aspect. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is I don't know if crafting a PD zone that still allows that type of use is still a good fit. I think that's a category that I would be okay with saying, no, that doesn't fit. That's not an appropriate usage within the zone. And that's
so. Are you talking about businesses for the future or existing businesses?
I think both. I think looking at the 4850.
So you would say you would get rid of the existing businesses?
I would say I would certainly want no more of those, and I would say I'm okay with eliminating the 4850 category as an approved usage, but I'm also okay with leaving the 5193 as a category that is approved and could continue to go on. And I think that would cover many of the concerns, at least from my perspective, that I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sumner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your comments tonight. When we noticed these, Jason, when was that sent out and to how many?
2 weeks ago, and it was just to those two businesses that were affected.
And any property owners around them, or?
No, we basically noticed what was required by state code and then noticed the specific properties, because they're based on the business licenses. There were only two businesses that were affected.
One thing that was brought up tonight that I'm very concerned about is the handcuffing of the businesses. Basically, that's what we're doing in some sense. And then the ripple effect of, I think it was Mr. Calais brought to our attention of their business. So I don't have enough information about what we're talking about tonight, and I don't see any problem in continuing this item. That's what I'd like to suggest, so I can get more information and even visit these sites and see if I have a better understanding of what we're voting on.
Okay. I'd just like to mention, first of all, in this entire discussion, that these are excellent Orem businesses: Geneva Rock, Dunn Recycling, Stouffer Towing, which you said this doesn't really affect, Pick Apart, which you say doesn't affect, MCR, UPS, which is affected in a associated way. These are all important companies within our society here in Orem. They all have a service that they render that is very helpful to our society. Certainly, recycling is very important. Certainly, Geneva Rock and what they do with the roads and how they help us is very important. So I personally am not comfortable yet until I get more information and we talk about this some more. So that's my feeling. Sam, do you have a comment?
Just one more question for Jason. At the Planning Commission, was it a unanimous vote to recommend these uses are taken out of those zones?
It was.
It was unanimous. Okay, thank you.
So I would like to make a motion to continue this to, and I don't know what another time would be, because I would like to have some discussion with Jason and the council and some discussion with the businesses. So I don't know if I can put a time as to when we would continue this to. We could put it a month away.
First meeting in February or something?
First meeting in February would be fine. Do we know what that date is? Okay. So I would like to make a motion that we continue this discussion until the first city council meeting in February. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
February 13th.
To February 13th. Okay. And at 6:30. 6 or 6:30? Okay, we'll make it 6, just so we're covered. So the 13th of February at 6 p.m. we'll continue this discussion to that time period, and we've had a second. And I'd like to go ahead and start. Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate all those who are here, and we'll continue this discussion. We now would like to go on to a resolution number 16, which is adopting the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, and Suncrest neighborhood plans and amending the Orem City General Plan to include the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, and Suncrest neighborhood plan as Appendix M. Kirby is our presenter. And Kirby, maybe you can introduce those with you tonight.
Do you want to go sign some things so the kids can leave or no?
No, we signed them all.
Yes, actually, while I'm getting this set up, I'll have them introduce themselves. This is part of our advisory committee that was part of the neighborhood plan. So if we could start from here and come down and each introduce yourself, that'd be great. What neighborhood you live in as well.
I have to push the button.
Push the button. I'm Lisa Christiansen. I live in the Geneva Heights neighborhood.
Kathy Ambrose, and I live in the Park neighborhood.
Lisa Anderson, I live in the Orem Park neighborhood.
Jana Bauer, I live in Geneva Heights neighborhood.
I want to thank these ladies for coming here tonight. Not only are they here tonight, but they've spent, I would say, over 20, 25 hours in the last 6 months being a part of this plan, volunteering their time in the evenings. And I'm grateful for your service, for the community, and you're here. We're going to run through this plan. I'm going to assume that you've already read through the plan, that you've had a copy of it. The copy also is available online. So we won't spend too much time tonight, and we'll give you some time at the end to ask some questions of our advisory committee about the process that they went through to create this plan. I will just say one quick thing. You mentioned with the last item, you were talking about the Geneva Road area plan that we're going to do over the next year. That encompasses the west side of Orem, of which these neighborhoods are a part. So we talked about that, discussed it briefly. It's also in the plan. And I just want to let you know that that plan that we're doing for the west side is very much going to be driven by the residents that live nearby on the east side of the freeway, and especially the business and landowners that live in the Geneva Road area. So this plan is not about the EPA coming into town. They provided the funding, or part of the funding, but they're not mandating us to do anything adverse to the community. This isn't about staff imposing what we think the Geneva Road area is. This is going to be a plan that property owners, business owners, and residents, some of whom may have participated in this plan, are going to come together with experts in the field and with city staff, and we're all together going to work on what is the future of that area. Do we leave it the same? Is that the future? Or because of the changes that are happening in Vineyard and also in Orem, do we consider some change? And I would just say at the outset, that answer, we don't have the answer yet to that. It's likely going to remain a job corridor because there's so many valuable businesses for us there that provide a lot of employment. But maybe there will be some changes, and that's what we're going to explore. So I just want to make sure that you understand that you're not worried about the businesses out there, and you're not worried about how staff use those businesses. We don't view them as something that's wrong with Orem. They're a vital part of it. And if we're going to do anything over there, it's going to be making the area and better enhancing it. It's not going to be pushing out a lot of the businesses that are already there. Okay, so what's the purpose of the neighborhood plan? And that's this that we put together. And there's a copy online. The residents have already been noticed of it, but others that want to look at it, I'll give a link at the end. The neighborhood plan is several years ago, the council decided that, we have a general plan, and a general plan is just like it sounds. It's general. It's not very specific, because otherwise it'd be a 1,000-page document. And they decided it'd be good if we spent some time, went to each neighborhood and developed a neighborhood plan that could be adopted as part of the appendix of the general plan. We could get a little more specific. The reason that's good is because, just like today, the first item, actually it wasn't an item. The residents from Southwest Orem that came up talking about the PEG development, you're hearing one side of the story, but how does the whole neighborhood feel? Maybe they feel the same way. Maybe they feel different. It's hard because as a council, if the only voice you're getting from residents is when you present something that they don't like, what other voices do you think you're going to hear? You're going to hear the ones that are angry or not upset with what's going on. You're not going to hear the voices of residents who maybe like the other side, like what we're proposing or what's being proposed. So the idea of this neighborhood plan is we're not going in there with the house on fire saying, what should we do? We're coming in and we're working with residents and saying, how do you feel about your neighborhood? What do you want to see in the future? What are your priorities? And this will hopefully help you make better decisions. But what is this not going to do? It's not going to solve all the neighborhood problems. I tried to make that clear throughout the process that this plan isn't about, we need to address on page 13, my neighbor has a car parked outside on his yard and we need to get rid of that. This is not going to be that specific. It will provide consensus of the things that the neighborhood cares about and is concerned about. This is the schedule that we're following. We've started at the top and we're going down to the bottom. Right now we're at number 5, the Geneva Heights, Suncrest, and Orem Park neighborhoods. Next we're going to be in the Orem and Sharon neighborhoods, and then we'll go through there and we'll end with the Lakeview and Cherry Hill neighborhoods. I think, was it Murray who said he's asked us to change this? This has been a plan we've been following for a while, and once we're done with it, we're going to update it. We're going to start updating these plans by starting again at 1 and going all the way through. These are the meetings we've had as part of this neighborhood plan for the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, Suncrest. If you want to save some time, we call it GHOPS, for the GHOPS plan. And we're at December 12th, the city council meeting. But you can see all these advisory council meetings that we had. And I think, ladies, were y'all there for every single one? Almost all of them. Yeah, we had about a dozen that were there for most of the meetings, and about 24 that participated in at least some of those meetings. For the neighborhood meetings, at the first one we had over 150 people come. We try to have these in local neighborhood spots, usually elementary schools, to make it easy for people to come. So we've had a lot of participation. In addition, online, which I'm going to show you some of the results of what the neighborhood came up with, the advisory committee came up with. We had about 120 participants online participate in the survey. One of our neighborhood meetings was a bus tour, and I'm writing a little article for a planning publication that's about, the title of the article is why every city planner should have a CDL, a commercial driver's license, because this is one of the first times I've done this where I took a group out with a bus and we just went out into their neighborhood and went to spots and had a conversation. And anybody want to comment about how you liked or didn't like this bus tour that we did?
It's easier when you can go to a site and say, I like that and I don't like that. Somehow a picture speak 1,000 words besides, talking a lot.
I think when you have it where the rubber meets the road and you actually get involved in the area and you see it, that makes a huge difference. So I appreciate the fact you're doing that.
Well, thank you. I agree. And I don't say this to toot my own horn to say, hey, I'm out there doing this, but I want you to know that as staff, we're not imposing some agenda that we have on what we think Orem should be like. We're meeting with neighbors, we're listening to neighbors, we're trying to understand what residents want. At the end of the day, if they don't want Orem to change, that's fine. As a planner, I'll probably need to get another job somewhere else. But what is most important to me is not to have some planning utopia in Orem. It's to make sure that residents want what they want, and then how do we get there from A to B? Because as somebody said today, listening to the conversation we just had on the last item, it's complicated, isn't it? It's not black and white. It's often difficult to get to where you are now and where you want to be. Speaking of that, where we want to be, here's the neighborhood's vision statement. Now, for each one of these, I'm going to show you there's a bar at the bottom. That bar is related to the survey that we sent out, or over 120 participants took part, and they were asked, do you agree, somewhat agree, are you neutral, do you somewhat disagree, or do you disagree with this statement? So for the first one, the neighborhood vision, you can see that there was a lot of agreement. We are neighborhoods that value community and diversity, and we have a strong desire to promote safety, health, and education for all our neighbors. Would someone like to speak to why you chose diversity as the first thing that you mentioned, that we're a community that values, that we're neighborhoods that value community and diversity?
We value diversity because we see Orem as a place that's becoming more and more multicultural, and we feel that connection and enforcing that community will only make us stronger instead of being divisive by culture and by socioeconomic classes. That would only make us weaker.
If you look through the neighborhood plan, you can see that the demographics section shows that this is one of the most diverse sections of Orem, both economically but also ethnically. And one of the things I love about this plan is if you just as council, if your biggest impression of Orem residents is the people that come in here upset with something that is being proposed, you're getting the wrong picture of Orem residents. And you're going to see that in some of the goals that the neighborhood came up with today. So I'm not going to show all of them. I'm going to assume you've already read this. I'm just going to pick a few highlights that I thought were interesting or that the neighborhood was particularly passionate about. For one of the goals of the transportation goals, this is one of 5, I've only listed one. It says increase the street network and improve the quality of bike and walking paths in the neighborhoods along State Street, 1200 West, and Geneva Road. You can see that the 2 green colors, you've got over 70% in agreement with that statement. With the economic goals, first one, maintain property values by continuing to invest in public infrastructure, particularly transportation-related infrastructure. You can see over 70% of the people that in the neighborhood agree with that statement. Now something a little more controversial. Consider increasing taxes. And by the way, these goals, this is not something I came up with. This is what the residents came up with. I have to say that because this one shocked me, honestly. Consider increasing taxes slightly to ensure that the level of service for city services, particularly police, parks, and public works, does not decrease over time. This is one of those areas where, maybe as politicians, as people that are here, that hear people that come in that are angry, you might have an idea of what Orem residents think about taxes. I was surprised to see that there were more people supporting this, and also the advisory committee came up with this, but there are more people in the neighborhood that support this than don't support it. What was particularly, I think, what drove, well, actually, I'll let the advisory council speak. Why did you come up with this as a goal? What are your thoughts behind this?
One of the things we talked about was enforcing zoning laws in our neighborhoods, keeping our neighborhoods nice. And then we found out there's only three guys who run all of Orem to, make people take their cars away and clean up their yards and so on and so forth. It's like, okay, do the math. There's just not enough bodies to cover the territory. And I think we need to make an investment in our future to keep Orem nice. It's just logical that you would have to increase your budget, increase your staff, increase your budget so that we can keep Orem nice.
So a question I have for the 4 of you. Do you see areas where the city is not enforcing zoning laws in your neighborhoods?
In my neighborhood, I'm getting pounded on 3 sides. I'm hit on the south and on the east and on the west.
By what?
What
are you getting pounded by?
I have neighbors that do not take care of their houses. Their yards are full of junk. One of them's operating an illegal business out of his home where he repairs autos, and so he has more than the 8 that you're limited to. And this weekend we had a semi-truck through there. I tell people I live in the Target's backyard. Go to the men's section, go 5 houses south. That's me, okay? So someone needs to get out there. We as neighbors have tried to work with these people, but they have not been amenable to what we've approached them. One of the houses this month, a new renter moved into there. He cleaned up the property. We went over, here's cookies. Thank you so much for coming. We're so glad you're here. You know, we try to encourage kind of behavior, but there comes a point where we can't do it ourselves. Somebody with a little more clout needs to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
My neighborhood borders Sutter Street, and we're being affected big time by wiggy wash, not only the noise, but also today I noticed how much exhaust I could smell from them because I'm just down one of it. Not only does it affect me, it affects several neighbors. We've lost a family. They gave up and found a new home and moved out. I know the city's in a precarious place enforcing ordinances. My mind is blanked on the word, but because you approved their permit, but that is affecting us, and we would like more done, like behind Target, that preserves our neighborhood field, like right directly behind Target on 165 South, to continue that around anywhere there's a business that borders residents. It's a good neighborhood, and yet we're on the losing end of this battle. There's also light pollution also. That's how it's directly affecting us, these ordinances.
I pulled this goal out not.
Did she want to mention anything, or you okay?
Please. Yeah, sure. Just make a comment.
I mean, we've heard from you already, but
so our neighborhood, we do have a lot of. There is one lot that developers bought and they've never built on it, and it's got super tall weeds, and I turned them in, and all it would take is one spark, surrounded by 3 houses. And we've got a lot of that on 1060 West. We've got one lot there that's would rival Geneva Road's junkyard.
So Dana, what would you say to those that say, well, these police officers, they're just not doing their job, they need to get out there and do a better job?
I just know that there's only 3 of them, and there's 98,000 of us, and
so many hours.
Yeah.
One of the things about this neighborhood plan program is that as part of it, it's an educational process where they learn about how the city works. And so that's why they came up with this, was to say they can see how strained some of these city departments are, some of our resources are. So I didn't pull this one out to say, hey, that's a good idea. I just pulled it out to show you, to highlight the fact that you may have an idea of what you think residents want. Maybe you don't hear so much from a certain type or other residents, and understand that they're interested in new ideas and ways to serve the community. And these 3 neighborhoods in particular are affected because they're some of the older neighborhoods, and they have some of the more lower median homes.
So Councilmember Lentz would like to make a comment.
Sure.
Just a question on, as you're showing these survey results, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got these results? In other words, did you email every utility customer that was in these boundaries, or was it just everybody that was present at the meeting that got a little thing to take home? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We put a link, orem.org/survey, on the notice that we sent out to 5,000 Orem households in these 3 neighborhoods. And we got 120 respondents. That's not the best, but the interesting thing about this, I'd say it skews towards older people because they're the ones that tend to read their mail more than younger people. So consider that yes, this isn't extremely representative. I think it's a representative sample, but it's probably skewed towards older Orem residents. Sure.
We saw a lot of things in the city and how the city operates, and we met with many departments, and there are a lot of great ideas out there, and often we were like, yeah, how do we get that happening? And then the answer was, there's no money. So we want to invest into Orem to build it up to be, progressively becoming better and better. We don't want to just be spendthrifty. We want to do things that make a community special.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. A couple of the Public Works Parks goals, speaking to things that make Orem special. Increase the coordination between the neighborhood residents and Public Works Department through communication and outreach. That was a strong thing. They want to see some more interaction. Increase the number of community gardens, replacing vacant and underutilized green space where possible. Council members, do any of you know how many public community gardens we have in Orem? Public.
The hospital's
Hospital's public.
Orem community.
No, it's private. It's on private property.
How many public? Open to the public. You're talking about on public.
On public property, how many?
I want to say zero.
Zero.
We have zero. That's exactly how many we have. But interesting that this neighborhood pulled this out as something they were interested in, because that was one of our stops, was at the private one, the hospital's one, which isn't huge. They're not able to have a lot of people. They are expanding it, but it won't be, even when they expand, it won't be huge. But it is beautiful. And community gardening is something that could be done where there's...
So let me ask our panel here some questions on that. In Orem, we have quite a few people who own an extra lot. Not sure why, but we do. And those extra lots could be used for community gardens, not one that the city owns, but that the neighborhood comes together and produces a garden on that property. Are you aware of any pieces like that within your neighborhoods? And if we were to get involved that way, do you think there would be enthusiasm for it?
There's not one in our neighborhood, but on 400 South on the south side, there is one about 600 West. There's a family who has a vacant lot behind their house because they didn't want anybody to build and block their view, and they let people garden there, and it's very successful, but it's private.
That's the Tim Stay property. And interesting about just a few years ago, we worked out a arrangement where the city was picking up the water for that so he didn't have to personally pay for all the water to water the gardens. I thought that was a really good effort with the Public Works group.
Just a quick note on that, we don't have to take out any amenities at any parks to do this. There's a lot of green space that are on the peripheries of parks, just the edges of parks, that could be used for something like this. It's very popular in a couple cities. I might show you some examples at a point in the future. But I talked to the Parks Department about this idea, as we discussed many of these goals with different departments, and they were open to that idea of having community gardens, something to think about. And the last one, provide a city-sponsored farmers market that is larger scale and regularly scheduled for spring, summer, and fall. Some of the goals for neighborhood policing. This is 2 of 5 that were in the plan. Consider a rental license program or other program to better manage absentee landlords and single-family residential neighborhoods. Does anybody want to comment on that one? Yeah, we had one that was a proponent of this who couldn't make it. She couldn't stay as late. But I'll go ahead and move on for the sake of time. Increase the number of police officers and/or NPU staff to provide a greater police presence in the community. Jana, do you want to just say again, 30 seconds, why that's important to you?
It's important to me because we are growing, and I think we're growing a lot faster than our police department. And we have so many people down in Vineyard that will be migrating through our community. And if we get way behind, it'll be a huge hit when we have to do it.
And I'm going to go through all of the land use goals because these were the most important. I'll read through them quickly. Preserve the character within the neighborhoods by not approving zone changes that alter the predominantly single-family residential nature. Higher density development outside of the neighborhoods is acceptable if it's strategically located along major roads, State Street and Geneva Road, where future transit can provide transportation alternatives. Allow rezoning to occur in the State Street districts as recommended by the State Street Corridor Master Plan. Change the existing ordinance to create better guidelines for buffering between commercial and residential land uses. Change the existing ordinance for landscaping on private property to allow for more water-efficient xeriscaping techniques. These are all things we're working on, but I think this reflects the neighborhood. You can see that there's support for these things. You can see of the 120 random people that participated in this, of the 5,000 households on the west side, that there was support for all of these things, more than the majority, and only a relative few that disagreed or somewhat disagreed. One of the things you might hear when any particular development comes, and today was a good example with the PEG development, you're going to hear the people that are angry. But what about the rest of the people in that neighborhood? How do they feel about accommodating the growth? How about accommodating the 3, 4, 5 kids that they have to stay in Orem? And one of the great things about this plan is that you're hearing the voices of hundreds of people in these neighborhoods, not the angry voices, but the voices that are concerned about the future of Orem and are excited about the future. They see the growth that's coming, and they're not scared about the growth. They don't think that this is turning into some demonic socialistic place. They are happy about Orem. They're excited about Orem. Yes, there's growing pains, but they want to accommodate that growth. They just don't, and here's the key, because we're going to come up in this next year with the State Street districts. We're going to be working on that a lot in public outreach, and then we're going to come back to you with more plans. Our goal is to allow for growth strategically. That means two things. That means we strategically have growth along State Street and where it makes sense, where future transit, maybe like they said, can provide transit alternatives. But it also means that we're not approving big developments in the neighborhoods all around where it doesn't feel strategic, where those people will have to use their cars, where they'll add more traffic to the roads. So it's two things. It's being strategic about the growth, and it's not approving big developments in the neighborhoods that disrupt the single-family neighborhood.
So, Kirby, a question on the land use goals. Were those ones that you wrote or ones that the panel wrote?
These were all that came out of discussions that we had for the neighborhood. So these were things the neighborhood wrote. Well, they didn't write them specifically, but we talked about them. We went over them. We changed them. We adapted them. We had multiple meetings, and these came out of the meetings, and we had multiple meetings where we discussed these. Do any of you want to speak to these goals at all, or do you have any specific questions for them about these goals?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, and I'll just point to one last thing, and that's the next steps. Each one of these neighborhood plans has an implementation guide, and as part of my review as an employee, Jason checks with me and says, hey, how are we doing on these? So we don't just take this thing and say, oh, good, we're done with it, let's go to the next one. We're constantly looking at these, and we keep these implementation guides together from all of them, and when we have the time and the funding and the availability, we say, can we tackle some of these? What are we working on? What can we do next? If you want to read more about the neighborhood plan, if you're here today and you haven't seen it, you can go to orem.org/planning and click on the neighborhood plans button, and you can find a copy of this plan as well as all the previous plans we've done. With that, I'd just like to give a couple minutes here for the advisory committee to share about the process. What has it been like? Did you come in with any conceptions about how the city works, and did that change over time? Is there anything you wanted to voice? And then after you're done, council, if you have any questions for them, and then we'll be done with the plan.
Well, I turned it off. Well, I was just, it was an eye-opener for me. I'm always willing to get in on stuff, but at a lot of our meetings, we had special people from the city over departments and stuff come and talk to us and explain how the whole thing worked, and it was kind of like, wow, okay, I didn't know that. So yeah, it was a really great experience, and it gave us all a better idea of what could be done and what can't be done and what should be done. And so I thought it was really great.
So we're hoping that you don't just chuck this in the bottom drawer. It's an appendix to the appendix to the whatever that was in this big notebook and whatever. But we're hoping that you respect the ideas, that we're able to communicate those ideas to you, and that if you do have some questions, that you'll ask us. We're not really sure if you really meant this, if you really meant that sort of thing. So we put a lot of work into it, and we're hoping it's worth the effort.
The process really has endeared me more to Orem. I'm very impressed at how dedicated Kirby is to listen to us and to help us process what we wanted and show us the realistic elements of it and then the potential that we're all working towards. I thought it was fabulous.
My husband and I were both on the committee, and like I forget her name, said it was very enlightening to us to see how things work. We have had some problems with some of our neighbors and didn't know that we were so short-staffed with the police and neighborhood preservation and stuff like that. And so it really opened our eyes to how the city works, and we hope that we represented our neighborhoods well.
We very much appreciate your efforts and your work. You know, it's interesting. Everyone on the council is a resident of Orem, and we're all concerned over our community. And I think we have one of the best cities in the nation. We have one of the safest, one of the best places to raise a family, one of the best places to grow old successfully, whatever that means. But we very much appreciate your efforts toward your neighborhood, and your neighborhoods are a big part of Orem. So thank you for your service. Councilmember Seastrand has a comment.
Thank you. These are like the neighborhoods I grew up with. I went to Geneva Elementary, and back then we were cutting through orchards and crossing Center Street without sidewalks, and it was different back then. But this is really a significant part of Orem. And my thought or my question is, you know, one of the challenges we face on the City Council is trying to get a good feel for what the residents really want. And I know sometimes there's desires for others to influence or try to tell you what you should want. And so my question is this, do you feel like this is a good representation of your plan and your vision as opposed to someone else trying to influence? I mean, that it's not the city plan, that it really is your vision of how this fits together.
I think Kirby did a good job of taking our ideas and putting them in that fancy language, you know, whatever you call, yeah. Taking our plain spun ideas and making them, you know, acceptable to the council in a manner that you would understand. So,
great.
I don't think he influenced or was guiding us. We would say, he was probably like, not again. Okay, here's the ladies.
Yes, I said, Kathy, you can't swear like that.
Yeah, he taught me how to act like a lady, kind of, and he also taught us how to act like Texans. And I do think every city planner should have their CDL. I called the Orem reality tour, but it was great. But no, we said, here's where we're concerned, and here's where we want to go. And he said, okay, well, this is how it works in the government. You go this way and that way. So no, it wasn't.
And do you find good influence as you talk to your neighbors and other people? Did you get additional ideas that may have agreed or disagreed?
How many are really not in a place in their lives to participate this actively?
Yeah.
So yes, we did reach out. I mean, I even in church would even say, okay, the survey's out, go do it. So yeah, I think we did.
Great.
I think a good example is the one where we say we want the rental landlord program put into place. And the issue we were trying to address was the fact that we have rental units, which are becoming more common, and it's fine if you want to rent a house, I've got no problem with that, the property's not being maintained properly, so that it devalues the other homes in the neighborhood. And so instead of saying, well, you just, send somebody out and pound these people to death until they clean up their yard, the suggestion was made by the lady that was the landlord that Salt Lake County has a landlord program and whatever. So we've tried to present things in a positive manner instead of saying, let's more enforcement or beat people up. We tried to suggest, here's a positive program that we can put in place, run by revenues charged to the landlords, that can do something to help solve this problem of rentals that look pretty bad.
Good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Councilmember McDonald.
First of all, thank you. You are Orem city government at its basics, right? And I don't know, you had 8 or 10 people maybe on the committee, perhaps more, a dozen?
No, we had a dozen or more.
And you got 120 responses out of 1,000 of potential responses. And you come to our level and we have 7 citizens of Orem trying to represent you. And so digging that a little deeper is exactly what we want to do, and I want to thank you for your services. Part of the way you help us make sure we don't stick this in a bottom drawer and forget it, to your earlier comment, is that you help remind us. I think active neighborhood voices are helpful to us. So you know how to get a hold of city employees, you know how to get a hold of elected officials. Please don't, we'll get on and be busy with other things. We won't stick this in the bottom drawer and forget it, but it's kind of up to the citizens to help us continue to move that forward, and we're grateful for helpful voices throughout the community that remind us of issues that affect their area that we might not be aware of because we don't go to church with the people you go to church with and don't shop maybe at the same stores and don't see them at the schools that you go to. I don't hardly shop at all, so I have someone in my home who takes care of that, and she does a wonderful job of it. But so you have a different sphere of influence that I have, and we would be grateful for you continuing to let us know those things.
Dana came and spoke about.
Yes, and I'd love to talk to you later. I've got your number. I'll call you later about the.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, I would accept a motion from someone to approve these plans.
I would move to approve.
Pardon me?
I would have moved that we approve to, is there a specific you want me to read?
Page 5 under the recommendation at the top.
That we adopt the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, and the Suncrest neighborhood plans.
And amend this.
Do we need it's a resolution? I'll see if
it says resolution.
We're looking to see if
it's not a resolution.
Public hearing.
I was asking if we opened it up for a public hearing. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we did not open it up for public hearing. Thank you for bringing that up. This is a public hearing, and so before we take a vote, we will allow anyone who would like to come forward to make a comment. And if you could give us your name and hold your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Margaret Holmes. I live at 195 South and 65 West in Orem, over in Orem Park. And I've been part of this council as well. Not quite as often because of going through chemo and things like that. But one thing I would like to state, especially when you were surprised and shocked about, the slight increase of taxes, is that Benjamin Franklin once said that there were two things certain in life, taxes and death. But I say that there's a third one that he missed, and that's change. And we know that the population in Orem has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. And we know through this lady's comments about the amount of police officers that we have and the amount that we lack. And I feel that it's very important that, you pay for what you get. And we need to address that to the rest of our residents in Orem, that with the increase, and I was shocked when she was saying, that, there's only 8 on duty at one time, and then she gave some examples there that we can concentrate on trying to get more police officers, and if it does take an increase in our city taxes, I don't know if property taxes covers that, that's more city, I believe, but I just want you to know that you have pretty much the full support of our council, and we're trying to put that out to the rest of our residents as well on this topic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it. So this is actually a resolution. I'm not sure that it is a public hearing, but we certainly appreciate your comments. And we'll bring it back to the council. And so, Councilmember Seastrand, are you ready to make a motion?
Would. And I appreciated that comment. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to get that in there. So I would move that we adopt the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, and Suncrest neighborhood plan and amend the Orem City General Plan to include the Geneva Heights, Orem Park, and Suncrest neighborhood plan as Appendix M.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 The resolution passes. Thank you very much for what you've done. We now would like to move on to another resolution, item 17, which is to accept the fiscal year 2016-17 audit. Thank you, Kirby, for that presentation. Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson are our presenters, and they have handouts.
Mayor and members of the council, tonight for your last business item of the year is to go over the wonderful CAFR, and we know you're waiting with bated breath for this. At my left is James Gilbert of the firm Gilbert and Stewart, who are our current auditors. Mr. Gilbert is a resident of Orem, a lifelong resident, And we're glad to have him here, and we'll turn the time over to him.
The people are leaving during the excited times, Mr. Gilbert. Bring them back.
How you doing? I'm happy to be here tonight to go over your audit report. And this is on page 13 of the CAFR. This is our independent auditor's report. I'll just go ahead and read the audit opinion paragraph. It says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Orem as of June 30th, 2017, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows and respective budgetary comparison for general and major special revenue funds thereof for the year ended in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles of the United States of America. So that was a lot of words, but that is a clean opinion on your financial statements. It's the highest opinion that can be received. It's called an unmodified opinion, and it is a clean opinion. So that's the most important part. So let me just go over a little bit what we do in our audit process. So obviously the CAFR is...
if you could wait just 1 second. Councilmember McDonald has a question.
Many board of directors have an audit committee. Is it common in a city to have an audit committee made up of the elected officials or not? I'm asking a question in ignorance. I know in board of directors, they'll normally have a financial expert and maybe 2 or 3 others on the audit committee to delve a little bit deeper. Do any cities do that?
Yes, some cities do. It's not required by statute. Large school districts are required to have it by statute. So large school districts, which means school districts over 15,000 students, have audit committees. Some cities have audit committees and some counties have audit committees, but not all.
Thank you.
So, Councilmember McDonald, one other comment with regards to that. In our audit committee, Councilmember Lowe and myself and Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson, the 4 of us.
Oh, so we have an audit committee here.
Yeah, we just met.
Okay.
Yes, we have previously met, gone through everything. We had Gilbert and Sullivan there.
And who was on that again? Yourself, Mayor?
So those 2 and Debbie and I.
Okay.
So we've already been through the report and given our recommendation to approve and bring it before the council.
Yep.
We will have you on that next year.
I'm looking forward to it.
So our audit process, we go through, we design tests of transactions, tests of controls, tests of processes. We'll rotate around on what we do on those things. Our audit is designed to form an opinion on the financial statements that they are materially correct, and that's what our audit process does. And that's where our opinion stands. So included also, you've got a packet that is bound, the smaller packet. This includes 3 more audit reports. One audit report is for compliance with laws and regulations for essentially the federal government. One is for compliance with laws and regulations associated with your major federal programs. And then one is for compliance with laws and regs for the state of Utah. So again, we did our procedures associated with those 3 audit reports. Again, the city received the highest opinion you can receive on those audit reports also. If you want to note, just for instance, for informational purposes, on page 5 of that document is your schedule of federal awards. This is the amount of federal program revenue and expenditures you had during the year, amounted to just over $1 million in federal funds. There was one finding during the year that we have to report. It was associated with your general fund balance is in excess of the 25% limit. We recommended that you look at that, and your response was that you're taking that into account and appropriating to take care of that. So, any questions of me?
No, I'd just like to say that your firm's done a very excellent job, thorough job, and I was impressed with the information that I received during the audit.
Thank you. I'd just like to mention also that all of your employees, staff, all the people involved do a great job. We ask for a lot of stuff when we're auditing. Some of it's painful, I suppose, to come up with. But everybody's very helpful, does a great job. You're in good hands. So,
Great. Councilmember LeRae has a comment.
Sure.
I also wanted to echo the mayor's thanks. We were able to meet when our employees left. We were able to ask any questions that we felt like we should in private, and we were comfortable with everything we asked, and just the professionalism we appreciate. I think it was it Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Ron?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Ron was there. So he was very good and had high praise for our Brandon and our accounting people. So thank you for that, but thank you for the open and honest. We were able to ask any question we wanted, and we felt comfortable doing so.
Appreciate it. Also, just know that anytime during the year or anytime, if you have any questions or concerns, you're always welcome to give us a call or email us also. So we're available all the time.
Great. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Time here.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Seastrand.
I'll ask you a tough question. Just so I've been intrigued over the years in seeing different organizations that have had circumstances where some fairly large sums of money had been embezzled through, whatever scenario that individuals had been in a type of position where they had the desire or the need and they had the access. From your inspection of the systems, and I know we've got a solid, how many years have you been receiving the award, you guys, for the,
29.
Yeah, so just give me that reassurance that as you've looked through the systems, we really do have not only that everything's going where it's supposed to go, but you feel like the safeguards are in place that should something happen would be able to really identify that quickly and be able to address those issues.
That's the key with your internal control systems, to be able to identify at least material items like that would come about. And I feel pretty confident that your systems are in place to do that. Unfortunately, in an organization as large as yours, there's probably something, maybe small going out the door, most likely, even if it's just wasted time or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, you have systems in place to find those material items. Yep.
And do you feel like the current tracking system we have from a software standpoint, I know there's a variety of options available, and I know that our staff works really hard to stay current. Does it seem like the system we use is a good, competent, adequate system that serves the needs that we're looking for?
Yeah, I think it seems adequate at this time.
Okay. Any recommendations on that for
I don't have any recommendations.
Okay. Told you I'd ask some tougher questions. So there you go. No falling asleep.
Any other comments from the council?
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone care to make a...
Mayor,
yes.
if I would,
yes.
We'd like to just run through really quickly some major points in the cap,
yes.
if you don't mind.
See it up on the screen.
Yeah. So and this, I've sent the presentation to you multiple times. As we've corrected a few things on it. So I appreciate particularly Councilman Lentz's help in that. I'm just going to brush on the very high-level items. Obviously, there are some detailed components that relate to those items. The first item being the general fund revenues. In current audit was $56.2 million comparative to $53.7 in the prior year, so a $2.5 million increase. As we go through each one of you can see some of the major items that changed during the year. Those obviously there are various reasons as to why some of those changed, and these are in comparison to the prior year, not necessarily our budget, which is important to keep in mind because that variance is even larger because we're very conservative when it comes to those revenues that we budget. So just something to keep in mind. Feel free to, if there's a question about a particular section as we go along to ask.
Could you go back to that previous screen for just a second? I just want to look at it for a second. Okay, thank you.
Then we touch on, these are specific to the general fund, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. Expenditures increased from $46.3 million to $48.1 million. An increase of 1.8. Obviously, the largest portion of that was related to salary and general salary and benefit increases that have occurred through that year. Some other items in there that either were increases or they didn't exist in the prior year. And so obviously when you have zero and you do something big, then that makes a significant change to that variance.
Councilmember Lentz has a comment.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun here a little bit. Once you're done with that final point, then
I'm done with my final point.
Okay. So one of the areas where we're making some clarifications was in that last point. And the reason I wanted to be precise with that is with those Utopia payments that were made, it's not reflective of a trend where that's getting more expensive for us. We were actually making payments for things that had happened in prior years. And so we were just kind of paying the bill that was still outstanding. So I just didn't want it to seem as though, Utopia is just digging us further and further when, in fact, the story was actually getting much better financially.
Yeah, and I appreciated you bringing that forward because I thought that was a very good clarification. I hadn't really thought through that very well and putting the total in there to begin with, that there is a better tearing those two pieces apart into the two components was as much more important to tell that story.
Wasn't that expense accrued in previous years when it was due?
Right.
No.
Why not?
Because, so for the OPEX assessment, that there was no requirement on our part to pay that. So where there's no requirement, there's no liability.
The
McCory amount was.
We had held off paying that.
No, I understand that. But the McCory amount should have been accrued years ago.
Probably should have when we entered into that milestone, although I'm not sure we knew. We probably should have done an estimate
we should have done it.
of that amount. Yeah.
And I think the issue is we weren't actually billed by the agency.
That doesn't make any difference. You should have accrued it.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. It was one of those ones where I'm not sure. Quite honestly, probably didn't even think about that one. We knew it was in the 100,000 neighborhood. Probably should have been in there. The next one is the general fund balance. The total fund balance increased by $1.4 million, and the important thing to hear is to keep in mind the second bullet point there is that's with transferring $3.7 million of excess funds from the prior year. So had we been able to not do that, we would have seen an increase of $5.1 million in the current fiscal year. So just to give you some context as to how the current year actually really went. And as James mentioned here, because of exceeding the 25% state maximum, we'll need to at least do approximately $1.6 million to bring that number underneath that 25%. And then on top of that, if we intend to do the same thing with our 15% goal for fund balance, that would require an additional amount of 2.4. So a total, if we did both, a total of $4 million would need to be transferred. Next one is pension liability. And the reason I put this in here is because of the change that occurred with the Government Accounting Standards Board, where this had to be started being included. And it's a really big number. And so that's why I wanted to mention it in here, is because as you can see on the third bullet point, our share of that pension liability is $14.3 million. And it changed 1.7 in a single year. Next year, that number could easily swing 1.5 million the other direction because of various aspects. One of the big reasons it had such a big, if you will, negative change this year is because of the change that Utah Retirement Systems made to their earnings assumption, which is that second to last bullet point. And you can see it doesn't seem like that's a big change in percentage, but it has a huge impact, even just that small of a percentage change in that assumption.
Did that require an actual transfer of funding then?
No.
That? It's just
this isn't it's all balance sheet related for the most part.
Okay.
Now there is a small component, as that's what kind of getting at that last bullet point. The stuff related to the enterprise funds that we allocate to those does have an impact on those enterprise funds because they do have to totally accrue for that.
Okay.
And just a side note, because obviously each year we kind of have a discussion about the recreation fund. It actually hit almost exactly the right break-even number with the $402,000 contribution made by the general fund. Basically, the fitness center broke even with that contribution. And so just wanted to point that out. Note that the contribution for the current fiscal year is 404, and obviously we would anticipate that we're going to end up right around that same break-even point with that contribution as well. That's so far what the year, the year's looking like it might be there, or maybe even just slightly better. And then last item, which I know is always an item of interest, is the debt piece. Bonded debt dropped $5.3 million. That's the only reason I put the stuff in there after that is because obviously if you look at page 175, the number is going to be much larger because that includes the payoff on the 2 refunded debt. So I just wanted to make sure that there was a clarification there. But if you exclude those, we paid down $5.3 million in principal. We began paying the Siemens Energy lease here on July 1st of the current fiscal year, just to make you aware. And then associated with both those debt items is our total long-term liabilities decreased $3.3 million. Total long-term liabilities includes not only all the debt, but includes the pension, any pension stuff, any OPEB, workers' comp reserves, recaptured losses, and vacation, any accrued vacation. So those are the components that make up the total long-term liabilities. And that is the highlights of within the CAF for this year. Are there any final questions in relation to any of those slides or any of those things I've mentioned? Great.
Councilmember Lorette has a question for you.
Okay.
Sorry.
The pension thing was quite disconcerting. So 1.7 million
increase.
Mm-hmm. Did we know that was coming, or was that unexpected?
We don't know until, we probably could have known because URS does their financial statement. They're on a calendar year. So we probably knew what the assumption change was going to happen as far as what the actual dollar amount for Orem specifically. We don't know that because they don't give me that information until around the end of May, 1st of June.
So moving to next year, do you expect another similar jump?
If obviously their investment expectations, they review their expectations every 3 years. So I would not assume that they're going to make a change to their actuarial assumption again next year for this upcoming year because of that review. But obviously they're always reviewing all of their actuarial assumptions each year and giving us what the impact of those are. But I don't generally know those until late May.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor McDonald?
To Mrs. LeRay's question, this is not unique to us. Anyone who has a defined contribution plan, they frankly have understated their liability for years and years and years by overstating what kind of return they're going to get. And so they're trying to bring those into reality with what the expected returns really are. And corporations and businesses are having huge adjustments to their pension liability. So the fact that they've adjusted it from 7.5 to 7.2, and we've had a good year this year, I with you think they probably won't drop it, but that's been some of the cooking of pension books for decades.
Yep.
We're actually lucky that we're in as good a shape as we are. We're one of the best states in the nation that way, and while it's not comfortable always that we have to make up the difference if they don't hit their figure, it is helpful that we're adjusting every year and staying in sync and not getting out of control like Illinois and so forth.
Right. Yeah, the biggest thing to point out there is that number is very volatile. Because obviously there are a huge number of assumptions that go into their from those actuaries, and so they're always going to be wrong, right? And so from year to year, they're just going to have. It's one of those kind of things that the Government Accounting Standards Board (GASB) was very concerned that how do we give that information, but yet knowing that it's going to be very volatile from each year.
But hopefully after this year, the adjustment's going to be a lot less.
It's hard to say.
Hard to say, but the stock market's been doing very well. So.
Yep.
They don't base it off this year's stock market.
Yeah,
They don't.
that's where that 3
No, I understand that.
year
I'm just
window
saying that
play.
that plays into it over time.
Yeah. Is it 5? Yeah. So as you can see, you've removed yourself from the 2008, and you're kind of gaining.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, how come you had such a big increase? Because the market still didn't get to where their expectations were.
It's kind of like your workers' compensation rate, because it goes back over a series of years, and then you pay over that until you hit a certain point. So, okay, so are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, Richard? Okay. Great, thank you. Great to have you here. So we would like to then go ahead and I'll make a motion by resolution, accept the fiscal year 2016-17 audit as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Councilmember Seastrand, we'll go to you first.
Aye.
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 Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jamie, do you have any communication items?
Yes, just if I may, a note from Rob Smith, who's the Assistant Superintendent at the Alpine School District, that in fact the Board of Education did vote this evening to consolidate Hillcrest and Sierra Park elementaries. And so beginning next school year, they will begin that consolidation effort and shift the Hillcrest students to Sierra Park, and then of course begin to rebuild that school.
Great.
That's the plan, from what I understand.
Mayor?
Yes.
I've been receiving updates, and the Hillcrest group's blaming the city council for their problems.
Okay. That's fine. I think one thing I would like to mention, I appreciate everyone on the city council has worked hard to meet with all the residents and to hear all the discussion and to attend meetings and to be a part of this. And so we are, as a city council, Alpine and what they do is a big part of our city, but we don't make the decisions for the Alpine School District. So
I tried to explain that.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I would accept a motion to go ahead and adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, thank you.
I think you have some video responsibilities you need to tend to tonight. Is that correct?
No, Tom did